Before taking Gerontology 400, I didn't really think that there was too much that we could learn and also apply to the older generation. But the more as the class continued, the more I started to realize that there's a lot of things that can affect them, not just physically, but also mentally and socially as they age. The number one thing that I thought was the most interesting that I learned were basically the changing in roles and expectations for specifically immigrant elders. I remember when we learned about immigrant elder depression. A lot of it is caused by financial problems, lack of health insurance, chronic disease, or especially even the grief of just leaving friends and family. I found this to be super interesting because my mom herself is an immigrant. She's from Korea. And a grief of leaving friends and family is definitely something that I could see being applied to her if she were to ever experience depression in the future. So I think it's important that I now learn that, because this is something that I can keep a lookout for my mom, especially when it comes to the possibility of loneliness and isolation for immigrants can be really hard. And the fact that she is younger than my dad, so there is that possibility that as older age comes, she would have to deal with loneliness and isolation. Another thing for immigrant elders and things that they have to deal with, or the changes in roles and expectations, is biculturalism too. So basically the process of integrating two different cultures into one lifestyle can be very difficult, which I also observed from my mom. Trying to put in the East Asian ideologies mixing with Western ideologies can be a bit of a clashing, especially when you're raising a family and especially when you're an older age. It's kind of hard to decide what your values are, and I could see that being a possible problem that comes up for my mom. So another thing that I learned in gerontology class is basically how common depression can be amongst older adults too. A lot of people do assume that in older life you do have a happier life, a more fulfilled life, but there are circumstances where things aren't going the right direction that you want as age comes. So it was crazy the fact that I learned that it is the most frequently diagnosed mental disorder amongst older people, and that its risk factors tend to be female, a history of depression in the family, other comorbidities that add to depression, and also things like living alone. And it made me think again about my mom, because these are some things that she may have to face, and I really hope that learning these in class really helped me distinguish it and make it familiar, so that if I do see it in my mom, it's something that I can help her with. Another thing that I learned is that we learned what productive aging looks like, which I didn't know was a thing. I thought that as you age, it just kind of happens, whether it's productively or not. But there are some great ways to age productively, like benefiting in society or using your leisure time to build bonds with family or communities. Another idea of productive aging is finding religious participation, religiosity, or just spirituality in general. There's also a lot of civic engagement or membership in voluntary associations, or just volunteering in general, or even just being a part of politics. And I think these are really important to be aware of, because as I'm trying to be a nurse, it's really important that you're able to share important information and ways that older adults can cope with older age, and ways that they can use their time very productively while still being retired or being out of work. So these are great opportunities for me to suggest these things to older patients. I also thought that it was really interesting to learn that indeed boomers do not actually fear technology, because everyone does think that older age generations, they fear technology, they don't want to use it, they want things to go back to the olden days, but actually it should be encouraged. And I also think as a nursing profession, it's important to encourage these things to our patients, because there's a lot of things that they can get from the internet, including news and information, because we don't want them to be disengaged with our society. And it's also a great way for them to get health information about insurance, and even just promotion services and consultation that's offered through health programs. So I think it's really important that as a nurse, we also just encourage technological use, and just getting our patients to be more involved in their own health. And even if that means switching to technology or learning how to use it, then I think that's a great place to start. Overall, I think I learned a lot about gerontology, and I think that a lot of it can be applied to both my personal life with my parents, as well as just a nursing profession, because as we can see, the older age of the population is growing in America, so I most likely will be working with older patients. So it was a really great opportunity to learn all of this in gerontology.